Right, we're going live. I've managed to make it work. Fingers crossed. Okay, I think we are connected. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Apologies for a slight technical glitch at the beginning. It's our first time for our monthly live streams testing some new software. So if you can hear us, if you're connected, please do say hello, so we can make sure that everything is working properly. If not, really sorry, we will send out the recording as usual anyway tomorrow, so you should get the replay. So yeah, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. We're talking about Fairtrade Beauty this evening. And if you don't know, I'm Karen. I'm founder of organic beauty store Blommer Beauty. And every month we host live streams about different topics from the beauty and wellbeing industry. And for those of you that don't know, the past couple of weeks have been what's called Fairtrade Fortnight here in the UK and various other places around the world. And I think it's a really important topic in the beauty industry because lots of natural and organic beauty ingredients are sourced from all over the world, from places that don't necessarily have the same kind of trading or employment rules as we do here in the UK. So it's good to kind of shine a light on the topic of Fairtrade Beauty in general, which we'll be talking about, and also the different ways that brands ensure ethical business practices. So whether it's certifying their products with Fairtrade UK, whether it's creating their own ethical sourcing standards. So we've got two brands with us tonight from two different standpoints. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So yeah, if you're able to see us and hear us, please ask questions along the way and we'll get to them as we go through the chat. And yeah, to share both of their sides of the Fairtrade story, I'm joined by Rabia from soapNskin and Abi from Odylique. Hi guys, thanks for joining.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Hello, thank you.
We'll always just start with a little intro of yourself, just for people out there who maybe aren't familiar with your brands and your backgrounds. So Rabia, tell us a little bit more about soapNskin.
Okay, so I'm co-founder of soapNskin. We are a natural small batch skincare and body care brand. We make products that have been inspired by our dual heritage. So obviously we've taken inspiration from our British identity, as well as our heritage from along the Silk Roads. So we sort of infused both our identities to create these lovely rituals and bring wonderful ingredients to the UK market.
Amazing, thank you. And Abi, tell us about Odylique.
Hi, so I'm Abi Weeds, co-founder of Odylique. We are a British organic health and beauty brand, set up, 18 years ago now, with my mum, who began formulating our products back in the 1980s as a result of our family's history of skin problems and severe eczema. So yeah, we set up the company on the basis of all her great creations, and we were one of the first companies to certify organic with the Soil Association back in 2003. And then we also certified some of our products with Fairtrade Foundation over 10 years ago now. We've got a little factory in the east of England, not far from Cambridge, where we make absolutely everything. And yeah, our focus is really on sensitive skin still. That's kind of our real niche, and across many different products, from hair care to baby products, makeup, and of course skincare as well.
Amazing, thank you. And yeah, both brands made in the UK, but sourcing ingredients from places where you maybe need to be careful that the ingredients you're sourcing are fair trade. So in a nutshell, Abi, do you want to kick us off and sort of give us a little bit of a definition of fair trade?
So fair trade is, broadly speaking, and I think we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of capital F's and small f's as we go along, but yes, essentially it's about giving a fair deal to the people who grow our ingredients and who we trade with. So basically in certified fair trade homes, so if you're buying from a certified fair trade source, it will mean three things. It will mean that there's no exploitation of the people involved in growing or processing the ingredients. So certainly obviously no child labour, but much more besides that, and ensuring proper working conditions and rights. It will ensure that a fair price is paid to the growers, and that there's no exploitation with fluctuating prices on the world market, and they've got a guaranteed price. And there's also a fair trade premium paid to the growers that they can invest back in their local communities, such as schools or in their other industries and community.
Amazing, thank you. And Rabia, are there particular areas of the world we're looking at when we're talking about fair trade? Because it's not something we really have here for products that are made in the UK necessarily, or ingredients that are grown in the UK necessarily. So yeah, what sort of areas are we talking about when we say fair trade?
Yeah, you're right there. I think you're looking at the developing countries. So you're looking at specifically countries where the vulnerable people or vulnerable out there don't have adequate healthcare, education, social care for their populations. I think they tend to be more vulnerable because they could be exploited by even their own governments perhaps because of corruption or the lack of regulation in place, and also by companies and brands from the developed world who are keen to maximize their own margins at the expense of these developing nations. So I think you're looking at places like Africa, South America, some parts of South Asia, those kind of regions where I think you would find fair trade is quite applicable.
Yeah, and I guess here in the UK, we've got employment laws and things like that kind of protect farmers, workers, but it's not necessarily something that's practiced or available in those types of areas around the world. So yeah, it does make it so important. And for each of your brands, why do you believe that fair trade is such an important thing to focus on when you're sourcing your ingredients? Abi, do you want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, right from the beginning, provenance of ingredients has been so important, and just understanding where they come from, really just to ensure that, the supply chain is what we think it is, and that we know that people right at the beginning of that supply chain are being treated properly and fairly. And I think that's the case with a lot of organic and natural brands. They've all got this sort of very ethical underlying theme through everything they do. For us, it was really about making sure and really understanding where each ingredient came from, and being able to sort of definitely say we know exactly which farm this comes from, we know exactly what the people are being paid, and round about the time we started to get fair trade certification, it was all very new, but there was starting to be a little bit of I guess fair washing, if you want to compare that to greenwashing, but there was the term was starting to get misused. So we just really wanted to make sure that when we were saying fair, we knew it was fair. I think we've lost Karen.
Oh dear.
Maybe she'll come back.
Should we leave? Should we carry on?
I think we just keep carrying on until we hear something.
Okay. Right. Yes.
You've got a different fair trade story, haven't you, Rabia? So tell us about your lovely.
No, well, I mean, I completely agree with what you were saying. I think having a natural brand means that you are using ingredients that are coming from a lot of developing nations, and we have to. I think it's more a social and moral obligation upon us as brands here in the Western world to try and at least make a significant social impact on our fellow human beings who are not as privileged as we are. I think the whole initiative isn't just about ensuring fair wages and fair tariffs being paid, but I think it's also looking at sustainability and the environmental costs and impact of just farming and producing our ingredients. Because I believe it promotes, you're looking at sustainable farming, and like you've already touched upon, child labour, slave labour, regulated working hours, good work conditions. I think these are all really valid and very important things that we need to take into consideration, because we take it for granted here because it's legislation. And I think a lot of these developing nations have a lack of regulation. They have corrupt governments sometimes that don't have their people's interests at heart. And, like you said, there is a lot of fair washing, and we've discovered that along our journey, actually. So despite the fact that we may not be Fairtrade certified, we go to as much length as we can in trying to ensure that the ingredients we source are sourced ethically and sustainably, and looking into the social impact that they're having on the people who are at the bottom line, who are actually producing our ingredients for us. That's quite important.
I think it is crucial, and I think it is a little bit different to organic in a way, because there it's well, first, I mean, organic is recognized between organic certifying organizations, isn't it? So, the Soil Association will recognize EcoCert and other organic certifiers, whereas the fair trade organizations haven't quite got that so sewn up, and they don't recognize each other. Karen is back. So yeah, it's not like you can necessarily easily source fair trade certified in the same way that you can source organic certified. And I think very often it is still the onus on the producer, like you're doing, is to go back and do the research and find out just really, is this being grown properly? Are people being treated properly?
Absolutely.
Particularly as there aren't that many cosmetic ingredients available in fair trade certified quality.
Unfortunately not, there really aren't, and that's what's so tricky. So we use a lot of what we deem fair trade, but not, like you said, certified ingredients, but they are what we've done the research, we've perhaps gone out there and spoken to the places involved just to check that it meets our criteria of what we think is ethical and socially responsible and fairly traded.
Hello, I'm back. Sorry. Thank you for holding the fort. I knew you guys would be fab. But sorry, yes, I slightly disconnected there, so I do apologise. I mean, should I carry on with the questions, or maybe you've covered off a couple that we were going to go over?
Just carry on.
Let's carry on. All right, so you were just touching upon which ingredients are possible to be certified fair trade. Do you guys know some of them and can share a list of what they are?
I guess most of the foods are the ones you'd probably find in the food chain. I think coffee, bananas is one that you see a lot of.
Yeah, everyone's used to the stickers on bananas, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think tea, maybe cocoa. But as Abi said, beauty ingredients, or the ingredients you'd use in cosmetics, are less so, are more difficult to come by in terms of certified fair trade.
Yeah, I mean, Abi, you've got things like sugar and stuff in some of your products. Are there any others that are kind of okay for the food industry and the beauty industry that you would mention too?
There are a couple. So, some of the butters, cocoa butter, shea butter, which is the one that we use predominantly, that's actually got the fair trade certification, but they tend to be the more common fair trade relevant ingredients for cosmetics. So, sort of plant butters, baobab as well. Baobab's available in from a fair trade sources as well, but it's really actually quite tricky to find, particularly if you're looking for organic as well. It's relatively rare to find both, and organic also has certain criteria for the way that the growers are treated anyway. It's not quite as all encompassing as fair trade, but it does establish certain criteria and guidelines for social justice. So yeah, there's not a great deal you can do with bananas in cosmetics. It makes a nasty mess, really. So
maybe if you're mixing up a face mask at home with your own ingredients, make sure it's a fair trade crushed banana or something for the skin. But yeah, otherwise maybe not. Maybe that's the next thing you should test, some kind of banana formulation. But are there other sort of skincare ingredients you think should be starting to be looked at in terms of being fairly traded that aren't?
I think you could probably get botanicals in terms of dried flowers and sort of dried botanicals. And I was reading that you can get coconut oil fair trade. It's that is available as well. But I mean, there is such a vast sort of directory of ingredients that can be used. I think it's going to take time to sort of really catch up. And I think the issue with fair trade is that it looks at a very important aspect, obviously, about the producers in these developing countries and people who are sort of the laborers on the farms. But I think it disregards, or not disregards intentionally, but it doesn't really look at the quality of the ingredient. And that is probably why it's a little bit more tricky in the beauty industry, because I think the quality of ingredients are so important as well. And like Abi said, when you're going down the organic route, a lot of principles are sort of checked, maybe not as vigorously as with the Fair Trade Association, but they are sort of still addressed to a certain extent.
I guess you've maybe got to cut, and it's a shame, you wish there was just one standard for everything, but you've got to come at it from lots of different angles and almost have this crossover of organic and fair trade, and there's this portion of it that this is just perfect equilibrium, and then you kind of capture everything else around it that's not possible for either area, or cruelty free as well. There's lots of different terms that sort of interweave and overlap each other in the beauty industry, isn't there?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's tricky. It's about striking a balance, really, as well. I mean, one example is so olive oil you can get in fair trade and organic quality, but it's from a source that's quite sort of far away, or at least further away than where we currently buy our olive oil from, which is a lovely cooperative in Spain, which obviously being Europe respects kind of EU and Western welfare standards and workers' rights and so on. So if we then switch to the fair trade sort, we'd first of all have to get it from further away, which increases the carbon footprint of the oil. And then we kind of have to say to the cooperative in Spain that we've been working with for the past decade, probably 15 years now, sorry, we're no longer buying from you. And so, to get that balance right, it's not quite sort of black and white. And you really do have to sort of trade things off and think about things very carefully to come to a decision. It's never necessarily the right decision, but it's not simple balancing all the ethical and sustainability considerations.
But I guess the key thing, I suppose, and that's what we all kind of champion, we reflect the honesty and transparency on our website for our brands, and you guys do the same independently. It's about just having that dialogue of like why you're making those decisions, why you're choosing to certify, not certify, come up with your own procedures, regulations, or whatever internally for your brand. So I think it's just about choosing brands that have that dialogue in place and aren't necessarily shying away from the fact that they've gone down one route versus another. I think transparency is key in all of these areas that we love to take part in the conscious beauty world. So which, let's just hear from both of your brands specifically, which ingredients are fair trade or you've sourced ethically. So Rabia, do you want to share for soapNskin?
Yeah, so we actually don't stock certified fair trade ingredients, but we've gone to some lengths to ensure that obviously the ingredients, and not all of our ingredients, but the vast majority of our ingredients are sourced ethically as possible. So that's kind of, we have sort of, I guess, the way we sort of look at it in the standards, for the brand would probably be to sort of really do your research and actually not be afraid to ask questions from your suppliers, and sometimes they're very difficult questions as well. And you can gauge so much from a supplier if they're reputable, because they'll be willing to have a dialogue with you, they'll be willing to converse with you and explain situations to you, or perhaps justify certain reasons or reasoning behind their sort of farming methods, or the way they're sort of treating their farmers or the laborers. And you can gain a lot from that. So just, I guess, something that Abi touched upon about fair trade washing or fair washing is something you've got to be so mindful of, especially when you're tackling or looking at ingredients from these developed nations, because there is a lot of corruption, so much corruption. And I think when you get down to the grassroots of it, it's about sort of trying to sort of navigate through all of what you're being told and actually really just come to the truth. And I think it is just about trying to go with reputable suppliers. We're fairly small, so we've not had the opportunity to really kind of go down the certified fair trade route with a lot of the ingredients we use. But for example, our argan oil isn't certified fair trade, but it's single origin, and we've had that direct contact with the farm, whereby it's actually run by a European man, actually not by a local Arab. And he was actually, the first thing he said was, I'm not a cooperative, but I pay my women a fair wage. And you can follow that up, because we actually went down to Morocco and visited a lot of these women's cooperatives. And the problem with a country like Morocco is the lack of regulation, and the level of corruption. So you can have so many women's cooperatives set up, and they are literally just touting tourists for money. And those women aren't really part of a cooperative. They're literally just there for show. And it's only when you...
It must be hard. How do you scratch the surface of that when you're there? You know, you don't want to offend someone you're having maybe a business meeting with, but it can be hard.
It's, you know what, it is really difficult. I think what you have to do is obviously put up a different kind of facade, as though you're, yep, I'm buying it, or we're going through with it. But then on your way out, or just having a chat with perhaps the people there, or maybe a lot of the children that might be scurrying around outside, or maybe some of the women entering or leaving the cooperative, you can gauge that actually it's not a case of our Western definition here in Europe of a cooperative is everyone owns an equal share and profits are shared equally, or, you know, but that's not the case, not in a lot of these developing countries, unless it has been formed, unless there's been some form of real rigorous sort of, I don't know, what's the word, just somebody's been there to really sort of tell, I guess, us in the West that actually they've gone through these sort of checks, and it is a fair, you know, cooperative or whatever, but it's not always the case. So I guess for us, our argan oil was what we would term fair trade. We were able to verify, I mean, the fact that the first thing he said was, I'm not a cooperative, but I employ 600 women, I pay them a living wage. He's got healthcare facilities, education facilities for their children, creche facilities for the very young, so the women can actually come. They're the bedrock of their families, they're, you know, the breadwinners, should I say, and they've got somewhere safe to leave their children while they work, and they are happy and they are paid fairly. So for us, that was more important than actually trying to chase a label or a certified ingredient, just to know, or just to see for yourself that, okay, it is what we would deem ethical or socially responsible.
Great, thank you. And then Abi, on the other side of that, you've got certified fair trade. So what ingredients are certified, and maybe tell us a little bit about that process so we can see both sides of the possibility for ethical sourcing.
So the shea butter is the main ingredient that we use because it goes in a lot of our products. Not all of them are certified fair trade products because of this slight complication I mentioned earlier, where we'd have to sort of switch suppliers of some other ingredients, that like the olive oil, and it all gets very complicated. So wherever we can, we have gone down the fair trade certification route. Now, having that certain label on the product means that the growers, the producers, get a fair trade premium paid to them to invest in their local communities. And it means that someone from Fairtrade International, the inspectorate that governs sort of some of the international fair trade organizations, actually goes out to the farms and inspects them and makes sure that, you know, there really is fair treatment of workers, that people really are receiving the wage that they're supposed to, and that there really is some investment going on in the local community. So everything that Rabia sort of described, that she's sort of gone out and done field work to do with the certification, you've kind of got someone doing that for you. And then at the other end, when you're creating the product and you're putting it on the market, you've got the Fairtrade Foundation here in the UK checking that you know, the formulation, the labeling, and making sure that you really are using the fair trade ingredient in the product, and, you know, not just putting something else in. So there is an audit process behind the certification in a similar way that there would be for organic products. But the cooperative that we buy from in Ghana, it's the Akoma cooperative. And it was founded by a guy who is Ghanaian, and he's basically set this up to make sure that, you know, the money stays in that community. And, you know, he went down the fair trade certification route, I guess, to provide that mechanism to, you know, illustrate to others that it was what he was, you know, saying it is. And it's a really lovely story. It's, you know, there's a cooperative of women who kind of have been able to invest in their community schools and in you know, training on disease control of crops and health issues and disease prevention. And, you know, so you can generally see the real benefits of you know, the fair trade movement working with what's happened in that area in Bolgatanga in northern Ghana. So
that's amazing. It must be so nice in both instances to know and see like where the money you're spending on your ingredients is going, and the impact that it's having, more so than if, you know, you're getting it through a distributor. You can't necessarily see that whole chain all the way through. So I think it's nice, and you both certainly tell those stories so well in your products too. So yeah, it's fantastic, and it kind of leads us on nicely. So we've got Rabia, who's got their own kind of fair trade process, and then Abi, who go with fair trade certification. There's a little bit of lingo, if you like, that you need to be aware of, I suppose, between the two, so that you'll see on products there's a capital F for fair trade and a lowercase f for fair trade. So Abi, do you want to tell us what the capital F means?
Yeah, the capital F is the certified fair trade. So it's where there's been a kind of independent audit process in place.
And Rabia, lowercase f is then? your
Lowercase,
process?
I guess it's usually a case of saying that the product or ingredient is traded or fairly traded. It might have, they've sort of gone through their own internal checks or their own mechanisms to ensure that they've not exploited anyone and that it is fair traded by their sort of standards, but it's not certified by the
By third party,
by the
yeah.
international. Yeah.
So I'd say if you're just seeing lowercase f on your products, check the brand, check the retailer where you've got it. If they're telling the story of the ingredients and what's fair trade and what's not, then you should have transparency. But
Absolutely.
I'd say always ask questions. We're more than happy to answer anything. You know, we've not got anything to hide in terms of the products we stock. So if a brand is like that, then they should be able to give you that transparency and honesty.
And I guess you can look at other, sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
you can look at other terminology as well, which is sort of still encompass fair trade. So you'd look at ethically sourced or sustainably sourced. There's sort of precursors, I guess, to the sort of alluding to the same sort of mindset as fair trade.
Yeah.
On the labeling.
And I guess with organic certification as well, like Abi's products are, you've got that transparency all the way from farm to face, isn't it? That they always say. I love that phrase. And Abi, are there also a badge that you can use on your products from Fairtrade International?
Yeah, so it's the Fairtrade mark, they call it, which you generally most used to seeing from banana stickers and on chocolate, and green and blacks famously it was kind of the real flagship brand, I think, for Fairtrade chocolate in the UK. But now the larger chocolate companies are starting to do that too. So it's the sort of the square with the black and white or green and blue emblem.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And then actually, let's go to a viewer's question. We have a little pause. So yeah, if anyone else, now that we're over the technical difficulty, sorry, if you want to post questions, we'll capture them as we go along. So Beautyology is asking, I'm based in the US. Do you see a rising interest in fair trade beauty from customers here? I guess here in the UK, as none of us are in the US, but yeah, let's answer from the UK perspective, and hopefully that'll help Beautyology. Rabia, do you see a lot of people asking you about your fair trade credentials a lot more, or?
You know what? I think nobody actually outwardly asks us about fair trade. It's more about the quality of our ingredients and whether it's organic ingredients that we're using. But it's something that we like to talk about a lot because we do feel really passionate. Like I think we mentioned earlier, it's sort of like a social and moral obligation that a lot of brands in the West should have. And it's something that we tend to talk a lot about, talking about ethically sourced or sustainably sourced. And we like to sort of inform our customers. So it's a lot on our website, and we find that we tend to start the dialogue. I think a lot of people have started asking us about our plant butters, and they again aren't certified, but we have again supplied, or we have sort of sourced our plant butters from really reputable suppliers, where there is traceability and where they because of the scale of their operations and because they are so reputable, we will take the word to say, yeah, okay, if you're saying that it is ethical and that it is fair, we will sort of go by that and sort of continue to purchase from you.
Yeah. Abi, how about you? Have you had a big spike in people asking about fair trade, or a gradual change have you seen, because you've been certified for quite some time now, so over the years has it kind of grown in terms of popularity or requesting?
I tend to agree with Rabia. It's it's certainly awareness generally of the fair trade movement has grown, there's no doubt. The Fair Trade Foundation has done a great job of really raising awareness. Within cosmetics, though, as Rabia says, it's people really care where the ingredients come from, and that's the important thing. So you better know where your ingredients come from, because you're bound to be asked. And it's just so that concept you mentioned of farm to face is genuine. It really is something that people do get very interested in, and quite rightly so, because that is the big differentiator, I think, or one of the big differentiators between the kind of indie organic or natural brands and what you can go and buy in the supermarket. So that I think the stories behind the ingredients are really, really key, and knowing where they come from, and kind of just that sort of real the real story and behind the scenes element is common to fair trade, but it's not just exclusively about fair trade.
Yeah, I think it's something you see, I guess, in the beauty industry as a whole. I think it always starts with food. So natural, organic, fair trade, these are things that we have really come to expect as UK consumers in the food industry, and it's slowly trickling. But I would say I agree with you, it's more of an overall awareness and a desire for brands to just tell those stories, be transparent. We do get asked quite frequently, and this is more of an animal rights question, is about coconut oil. It's becoming quite a hot topic, whether it's harvested by a monkey or a human. So we get asked that quite frequently for a lot of our products, interestingly. But yeah, as far as the specifics for the other brands that are also on our website, it's more about whether it's organic, natural first, I would say, and then I think people feel more reassured if it's fair trade. But with the group of ingredients being quite small for beauty products, I would say that it's less of an expectation at the moment, and I wonder if that will change if and when the list expands. So yeah, watch this space in the UK. I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but hopefully that answers your question. And I guess we took a little pause, and I think let's move on to the particular theme of this year's Fairtrade Fortnight, which is sustainability. And they're saying, a lot of the farmers and workers who are not necessarily in climate polluting contributing countries are seeing the effects of climate change on their farms, and they're just kind of wanting to draw attention to the fact that not necessarily contributed but are being affected by it, and therefore fair trade is so important because you're getting that fair price for your crop, and it's not kind of fluctuating depending on quality, economic, environmental factors. So how would you say fair trade also enhances kind of environmental issues? Abi, do you want to take that one? Because I know with fair trade certification they focus quite a bit on sustainability as well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely they do. And you just touched upon when producers aren't getting a fair price for their crops, they can't really fight back against the problems that climate change causes. They can't put in irrigation schemes, they can't sort of change their methods perhaps to be able to continue growing. And so the fair trade premium and the fair price that fair trade producers get means that they can invest in future proofing what they're doing. So that is definitely one way it helps, but also many of fair trade growers are growing organically as well, which obviously adds to the sustainability profile of fair trade and fair trade movement. So yeah, it comes from different angles, but the cooperative that we buy from, for example, they invest in sort of knowledge about disease control without using chemical fertilizers, chemicals, and so on and so forth. So there's kind of grassroots investments going on to contribute towards best practice knowledge for growing sustainably and trying to just I guess future proof them against the effects of climate change.
Yeah, Thank you. Rabia, have you seen anything of that from, I mean, argan is such a hugely harvested crop, or whatever, in Africa, Morocco. Have you seen firsthand, maybe on your trip, or have you heard anything from your suppliers about sustainable initiatives that they're tackling? Or
well, our suppliers are actually certified organic by the Soil Association, so obviously they have quite a strict criteria in terms of the practices and the pesticides and their farming methods in that respect. I think it's a tough one, because it actually only grows in Morocco, and only in a very specific region of Morocco, sorry, the argan tree. So it's a case of and again, being in a country where there is not a lot of regulation generally, and widespread poverty as well, it just makes, I think, I haven't come across any sort of urgent or any sort of news in terms of how they're trying to make it a little bit more sustainable generally as a whole.
But I suppose then that's the importance of you choosing an organic supplier as well, because that will in turn also kind of protect biodiversity.
Yeah.
And as Abi was saying, that's pretty good sustainable start, isn't it? So yeah. Thank you. We've got another question. So another US question from Beautyology again. So she's asking, what do you wish the US beauty market would do to educate their consumers about fair trade? It's so focused on clean beauty at the moment. Now, I don't want to speak for everyone. I mean, I know probably both of your feelings on this, but clean beauty is such a grandiose, unfounded term that, we see it a bit in the UK, but I think in our industry, certainly natural and organic, it's something that we really try to not speak about too often. I could go on for ages about the topic, clean, green, all of this. But yeah, I guess, in some ways, the US follows Europe and in some things vice versa. So I guess, what do you think we do here in the UK in terms of fair trade that we could, tell our US friends to sort of champion as well? Abi, do you want to, have you got a thought on that, or Rabia?
Yeah, God,
it's a big
question. That is. I mean, it's kind of how do you future-proof the fair trade movement, really, isn't it? I mean, I think certainly the fortnights that are put on in the UK that raise awareness of fair trade are great, and they get everybody and talking about fair trade through the media, and there's generally a big uptake of awareness and interest during Fairtrade Fortnight. I'm not sure if the US does have a fair trade month. I'm sure there is something in the US, but I mean, taking a step back, I think what would help the fair trade movement most is if all the fair trade organizations could get together and talk to each other a bit more. Because there are some other really good fair trade movements like Fair for Life, Fair and Wild, and there's not a lot of mutual recognition between them at the moment, which I think is quite limiting in the growth of certification of ingredients and thus, of the whole movement. So I think that's actually what would really help. It's not so much, maybe, I'm sure on the consumer angle, yes, it'd be lovely to raise awareness much more, but I think you could also do that from the supply side too, if there was greater coordination between the various fair trade movements globally.
Lovely. Rabia, do you have any thoughts?
Gosh, I guess it's just about really trying to create an awareness of the impact that our demands, not just in the beauty industry, but I guess you could look at the food, textiles, all sorts of our demands in the West have put so much pressure on these developing nations, and our desire for cheap products has actually really contributed to people less fortunate being exploited. And it's usually the vulnerable. So I think it's about trying to establish a mindset that actually be wise in your purchases, don't be mindful, ask those questions, and think about the impact of people far, far away from you, the ones that are, you know, responsible for producing these ingredients, or the ones responsible for weaving your cloth, what kind of conditions they're facing. And I think there has to be more responsibility on Western companies and brands to sort of demand more. And also that will only come once consumers demand more transparency and consumers start questioning with, you know, how their items are produced and the working conditions of a lot of these laborers out there. I mean, we've had so much with high profile global brands that have exploited child labor, slave labor. You know, you've got concentration camps in China. It's endless. So it's about trying to, for consumers, actually demanding more. And I think there's not enough media coverage either. I don't think, not just in the US, but also in the UK. I don't think there's enough media coverage. There seems to be a lot of silence when it comes to the exploitation of people in developing countries. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's just how I've perceived it, how I
agree. I mean, I think it comes in waves, you know, and it's becoming this lovely melting pot of everything coming together at the right time. You know, you've got organic, you've got cruelty-free, that had a really big resurgence sort of 90s, and then that became the standard, and then EU regulation caught up, and then now I think we're seeing it more with organic and vegan and, you know, all of these things. But yeah, it does all kind of contribute to this clean term. But the way I kind of like to look at it is it's conscious. So having a conscious thought of where your products come from, the environmental impact, the ingredients within those products, you know, just really, I think we're so geared for consumption. Like marketing has taught us over the years that you just need to consume and then you're on to the next thing. I think it's just being, as you said, Rabia, quite mindful of what you're purchasing and really just taking the time to focus on that product and everything that's come together for you to possess that. And I think you'll also appreciate it more for yourself and for your skin in doing so. So that's something that we kind of like to champion on our site. And, you know, being conscious, not buying for the sake of it, and then also having, you know, as much transparency as possible around where the products have come from, how they're made, and who they're made by as well. Not just fair trade, but we really like to tell the stories of the makers and the brands that bring these amazing products to you. So we've got, you know, blogs about Rabia and Samar from soapNskin and Abi on the website, so people can really find it more of a personal experience rather than a big depersonalized brand or conglomerate. So yeah, I think it's just about, like you say, consumers asking for that transparency and, you know, shopping with their feet or whatever the phrase is trying to lead that. But I think if we as brands and retailers can do as much as possible to put that to the forefront, and then consumer demand comes at the same time, I think we'll be on to a winner and it'll be happy days for everyone. So yeah, hopefully that will happen still in the UK, and sounds like you've got a bit of a way to go in the US, but good luck. So I think we're going to wrap up now, but should we maybe just talk about, it's kind of come up a little bit as we've gone through, but have you got any, you know, particularly amazing stories that just highlights the fair trade credentials, maybe when you visited the places where you're sourcing ingredients from, or if you've heard about community initiatives that have happened as a result of your investment in those communities? Rabia, should we start with you to finish up?
Oh, I guess it's just the support. I mean, our argan oil, I think, is the one that really stands out, only because we can say it's single origin, fully traceable, certified organic. You've got something like 600 Berber women who are in employment, who are given a fair living wage by the standards of Morocco. So they are, by that term, a fair living wage. They're able to afford nutritious food, shelter, education, healthcare, all the things that we sort of take for granted here in the UK. And then they get other things like childcare, facilities for young children, creche facilities for the mothers that have small children there. And I think that's been the biggest sort of that was the biggest winner for us, I think, when we were sourcing our argan oil, was just the lengths that our farm or the supplier had gone through, or the farm actually, should I say, has gone through to implement these things. And I think it comes from, just wanting to change the lives of people who are working incredibly hard, out on the fields all day, and just giving them and their families, I guess, a better sort of lifestyle, a more secure lifestyle, I guess.
Because it is very labor intensive work and it takes a long time.
Oh gosh, yes.
So yeah, I guess seeing firsthand how, I guess, secure and happy and, well taken care of the women are, must have been a big amount of reassurance for you.
Oh gosh, I think it's so important. And I think it's more so because I guess, I don't know, I guess growing up, I've had a lot of experience visiting family and relatives from developing countries or in developing countries. My father was born and raised in Africa, so I've seen firsthand the exploitation of people around us when we'd go down, and it's actually really heartbreaking when you see children barefooted, scavenging in rubbish tips, and that's normal for them. Or you see, children that would have been my age at that time, and I would have been going to school and, having lovely meals and all the rest of it, and they are literally barefooted and running around. So it's actually heartbreaking because it's just such a social injustice, I think. And it's down to the countries being in a predicament whereby there is not a lot of regulation. They don't have social healthcare services, education facilities. There's no sort of moral compass to sort of protect the vulnerable. It's, I think, so incredibly important that we try and do what we can to just do our bit. I guess it just gives you a little bit more peace of mind. I mean, there's flaws in every system. I think the fair trade system itself has flaws as well, but it's little steps. We do what we can. It's not a perfect world, but as long as you've got good intentions and you're trying to make a difference in whatever way you can, I think that's sufficient. And if everyone was to do that, that would have quite a significant impact, I think.
Yeah, amazing. Wise words, Rabia. I love that. Great sum up. Abi, do you have any stories from where you source your ingredients from, or any last things you want to share about Fairtrade?
Yeah, I mean, it's again sort of anecdotal, really, from the Acoma cooperative from whom we buy our shea butter, and that was founded really to help members of the community, particularly the more vulnerable women, children and elderly, just to rise out of poverty. And what I really like about it is that there've been tangible investments made, like they renovated the primary school in Pusanamogo village in Bolgatanga, where the cooperative is, over a period of years. And I think what's also good about it is they not only just help the women with employment in producing the shea butter, but they're employing them in value-added industries as well. So they're helping them, with the soap making. So they're making liquid and solid soaps that are not just kind of a primary crop. It's actually sort of a skill and something that they can sell elsewhere in Africa, and not just export, but they've got, a way of getting more revenue than just sort of the selling of the plain crop. So I think that's what fair trade really is all about. It's that kind of real connection with the people growing our food and growing our ingredients in the products we use every day, and that's what's really so lovely about it, and well worth seeking out, really.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And Sneyana, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, has just said something really lovely, and I think it's a perfect point to end on. Thanks for this end question too. Very inspirational and comforting for going forward. And I think you're right, Abi, that's what the fair trade movement is about. It's just, you know, being citizens of the world and, you know, caring for where our things come from and who they come from and how, you know, we're having an impact and not, you know, taking advantage of anyone unnecessarily. So yeah, it's been a really great conversation tonight, so thank you both so much, and thanks for the questions. It's been great, and for bearing with me in my technical strife. So yeah, I'll send out the replay again tomorrow in case anyone's missed anything. If you've got questions, either just pop them in the comments on the YouTube video, or just send me a message and I'll happily answer. And yeah, if you want to check out either soapNskin or Odylique's products and Fairtrade, we've got a Fairtrade collection, and also in the email you received with the details for the event, there was a Fairtrade blog, and it goes into detail of a little bit more about the stories of both of these brands as well. So do check that out. And then I'll be back next month with our monthly live stream, which is all about everyday eco dilemmas. And Georgina Wilson Powell from Pebble Ethical Sustainable Lifestyle magazine will be joining us for that. And yeah, so bring your ethical and eco questions. I guess, is it better to have a canvas tote or a reusable plastic bag, and many more other questions in between. So yeah, I hope you'll join us for that, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Anytime.
Take
Thanks.
care, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.